make my first confession and communion. It was an old woman called Ryan who prepared us for this. She was about the same age as Gran. She was well-to-do, lived in a big house in Montenotte, wore a black cloak and bonnet, and came to school every day at 3 o'clock, when we should have been going home, and spoke to us about hell. Now, she may have mentioned the other place as well, but that could only have been by accident. For hell was the first place in her heart. She lit a candle, took out a new half-crown from her handbag, and offered to the first boy who would hold one finger, just one finger, in the tiny flame for 5 minutes by the school clock. Being always very ambitious, I was dying to volunteer, but I thought it might seem greedy. Then she asked us, were we afraid to hold one finger, just one finger in a tiny flame, and not afraid of burning all over in roasting hot furnaces for all eternity? All eternity, just think of that. A whole lifetime goes by, and it's not even a drop in the ocean of your suffering. Gee, the woman was really interesting about hell. But my attention was all fixed on the half-crown. When she was finished, she put it back in her handbag. It was a great disappointment to me. A religious woman like that, you'd think she wouldn't bother about a little thing like a half-crown. Another evening, she told us about a priest she knew, who woke one night to see a fellow he didn't recognize leaning over the edge of the bed. He was a bit frightened, naturally enough, and he asked him what he wanted. And the fellow said in a deep, husky voice that he wanted to go to confession. The priest said it was a sort of an awkward time, and wouldn't it do in the morning? And he said no, that the last time he went to confession, there was one sin he held back, being afraid to mention it, and now it was always on his mind. The priest knew then this was a bad case. He got up to get dressed. And just then, the rooster crowed in the yard outside, and when the priest turned around, there was no trace of the fellow, only the smell of burning timber. And when he looked down, he saw the print of 2 hands burnt on the bedclothes. Gee, that story made a shocking impression on me. But the worst of all was when she taught us how to examine our conscience. Did we take the name of the Lord our God in vain? Did we honour our fathers and our mothers? I asked her if that included grandmothers, and she said it did. Did we love our neighbours as ourselves? Did we covet our neighbours' goods? And I remember the way I felt about the penny that Nora got every Friday out of the old age pension. I decided between one thing and another. I had broken the whole 10 of the commandments. All on account of that old woman. And so long as she remained in the house, I had no hope of ever doing anything else. I was scared to death of confession. The day the others went, I let on to have a toothache, hoping that my absence wouldn't be noticed. But at 3 o'clock, just as I was feeling safe, along comes a messenger from Mrs. Ryan to say I was to go to confession myself on Saturday and be there for communion with the rest on Sunday. To make matters worse, Mother couldn't come with me, so she sent Nora instead. Now that girl had ways of tormenting me that Mother never dreamt of. She held my hand as we went down to the chapel, smiling sadly all the time, as if she were taking me to hospital for an operation. Oh, God help us, Jackie. Isn't it a terrible pity you weren't a good boy? Oh, Jackie, my heart bleeds for you. Don't forget to tell him about the time you kicked Gran in the shin. Let me go, I said. I don't want to go to confession at all. But sure, you'll have to go to confession. If you don't, the priest might come up to the house looking for you. Just know that I'm not sorry for you. Do you remember the time you went for me with a bread knife under the kitchen table? And the language you used. I don't know what he'd do with you at all. He might have just sent you to the bishop. I remember thinking bitterly to myself that if she only knew the half of what I had to tell. I knew now there was no hope, and I had great sympathy for the fellow. I remember the long steep hill down to the chapel and the sunlit hillsides beyond the valley of the river, which I saw in gaps between the houses like Adam's last glimpse of paradise. Then when she had manoeuvred me all the way down the long flight of steps into the chapel yard, Nora suddenly changed her pose. There you are, said she with a yelp of triumph, hurling me through the church door, and I hope he gives you the penitential psalms, you dirty little caffler. I knew then I was lost, given up to eternal justice. The door with the coloured glass panels swung closed behind me. The sunlight went out and gave place to deep shadow, and the wind whistled outside so that the silence within seemed to crackle like ice beneath my feet. Nora sat in front of me by the confession box. There were a couple of old women ahead of her. And then a miserable-looking old wretch came and wedged me in at the other end of the seat, so that I couldn't escape even if I had the courage to. He joined his hands, bowed his head, and then rolled his eyes in the direction of the ceiling, muttering aspirations in anguished tones. And I wondered to myself if he had a grandmother too. Only a grandmother could account for a fellow behaving in such a heartbroken way. But he was better off than I was, for he would go in, confess a sin, get absolution and come out. While I would go in, hold back a sin, and then die in the night, and be continually coming back, burning people's furniture. Nora's turn came and she went in, and I heard the sound of a slide being pulled across, and then her voice, as if butter would melt in her mouth. Another slide, and out she came. Oh God, the hypocrisy of women. She bowed her head, joined her hands a wee low down in her stomach, and walked all the way up the centre aisle to the side altar looking like a saint. You never saw such an exhibition of devotion. And I remember the devilish malice with which she had tormented me all the way from our house to the chapel yard. And I wondered if all religious people were like that, really. Then my turn came. With the fear of damnation in my soul, I went in, and the door of the confessional closed of itself behind me. It was pitch dark inside, and I couldn't see priest nor anything else. Everything that I ever learned about confession got mixed up in my mind, so that I knelt to one wall and said, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. This is my first confession." I waited for a minute or two, but nothing happened. So I tried it on the other wall. Nothing happened there either. He had me spotted all right. Now, it must have been just at that moment that I spotted a little ledge. It was about one height with my head. Now, it was really a place where grown-up people rested their elbows on. But in my distracted state, I thought it was probably the place you were supposed to kneel. Now, of course, it was a bit on the high side and not very deep. But I was always good at climbing, and I managed to get up all right. But you see, staying up was the problem. There was no place you could get a grip on except a little bit of wooden moulding up. So I took a firm grip of the moulding and repeated the words a little louder. This time something happened. A slide was pulled across, a little light entered the box, and a man's voice said, "Who's there?" "'Tis me, Father," I said, for fear he mightn't see me and go away again. Now the light was coming from about some place one level of my knees. So I took a firm grip of the moulding and swung myself down, only to see the astonished face of an old priest looking up at me. He had to put his head to one side to see me, and I had to put my head to one side to see him, so that we were more or less looking at each other upside down. It struck me as being a comical way of hearing confessions, but I didn't feel it my place to criticise. Bless me, Father, for I said, "This is my first confession." I rattled off all in one breath and swung myself down the least shade to make it easier for him. "What are you doing up there?" in an angry voice. And the strain that the politeness put on my grip of the moulding, together with the shock of being addressed in such an uncivil manner, was too much for me. I lost my grip, tumbled, and hit the door in a merciful wallop, and landed in the flat of my back out in the aisle. All the old people who were waiting for confession stood up with their mouths open. The priest came out the middle door of the confessional. He pushed the beretta back in his forehead. He looked something desperate. And then Nora comes scampering down the aisle. "Oh," said she, "I might have known you'd do it. I might have known you'd disgrace me. I can't let you out of my sight for 1 minute, you dirty little caffler." And then before I had time to get up to defend myself, she bent down over me and gave me a clip across the ear. This reminded me that I was so stunned that I had forgotten to cry, so that people might think I wasn't hurt at all, when in fact I was probably maimed for life. I left a roar out of me. "What's all this about?" said the priest, pulling Nora off me. "How dare you hit the child, you little vixen?" But I can't do my penance by him, Paula, says she. "Well, you go and do it, or I'll give you some more to do. Off with you." "Was it coming to confession you are, my poor man?" "Trust, Father," said I with a sob. "Oh," he says, "a big hefty fellow like you must have terrible sins to confess. Is this your first?" "'Tis, Father." "Worse and worse," he said gloomily. "The crimes of a lifetime." "I don't know whether I'll be able to finish with you at all today. I'll have to first hear the confessions of the old women over there, although you can see by the looks of them they haven't much to tell." The relief of this was really enormous. Nora stuck out her tongue at me behind the priest's back, but I couldn't even be bothered with her. I knew from the moment that that man opened his mouth that he was intelligent above the ordinary. And when I had time to think, I saw how right he was. You see, it stood to reason that a fellow confessing after 7 years would have more to tell than somebody who went every week. The crimes of a lifetime. Exactly as he said. It was only what he expected. And all the rest was only the cackle of old women and girls with their talk of hell, the bishop and the penitential psalm. That was all they knew. The next time, the priest himself steered me into the confessional. And when he had me settled at my side, he went into his side. "Well now, what do they call you?" "Jackie, Father," says I. "And Jackie, what's the trouble to you?" "Father," I said, feeling that I might as well get it over with while I had him in good form, "I had it all arranged to kill my grandmother." A terrible thing to do. What put that into your head? "Father, she's an awful woman." "And tell me, what way is she awful?" "Father, she goes around the house in bare feet. She takes guineas, Father. She gives pennies to Nora and none to me. And one night I was so heart-scalded I made up my mind I'd have to kill her." "And what would you do with the body?" "Father, I was thinking I could chop it up and carry it away in a wheelbarrow I have." "Oh no, Jackie, you're an awful child." "I know that, Father. You see, I was just thinking the same thing myself. Father, I went for my sister Nora too with a bread knife, only I missed her." "Is that the little girl that was beating you just now?" "'Tis, Father." "Somebody will go for her with a bread knife someday and won't miss her." He had me there for a full 10 minutes talking. And when he was finished, he gave me my penance, and then he walked out into the chapel yard with me. Nora was outside, seated on the wall, and when she saw the priest walking out with me, she put on a very sour puss in her. She was mad jealous because the priest never walked out of the chapel without him. "Well," says she, after the priest had gone, "what did he give you?" "3 Hail Marys," says I. 3 Hail Marys? You must have told him nothing. I told him everything. "Did you tell him that you went for me with the bread knife under the kitchen table?" "I did, to be sure." "And he only gave you 3 Hail Marys?" "That's all." Slowly she got down from the wall with a baffled air. And as we mounted the steps up to the main road, she looked at me suspiciously. "What are you sucking in your mouth?" "Bullseye sweet," says I. "Was it the priest gave them to you?" "Of course." "Lord God," she wailed bitterly, "some people have all the look. I might just as well be an old sinner like you." And that's it. Thank you. All right, a great piece of writing, folks, by one of our great authors. Actually, if you happen to come across this in your travels in Ireland, this book, My Oedipus Complex and Other Stories, the first confession is in that particular one. Great piece of writing, back to the old days.